Hi, my name's Peter Roper. I'm known as the Family Businessman. Welcome to Conversations with Family Business. Each week, I take a topic, a subject that I've covered many, many times over the last 30 years of dealing not only with family businesses, but owning our own family businesses. And the whole idea of this is to take a bit of time to think on a subject, reflect on it, and then decide perhaps whether to take some action on it. So, in 15 minutes, I want to cover something, see how we go. And today it's the cost of unspoken expectations. The cost of unspoken expectations. Now, before I cover it, I just want to explain that I've got stuff all around me here to try and remind myself of all the things I want to cover and squeeze into 15 minutes. So occasionally you're going to see me look left and right and stuff as a prompter and as a reminder. And in fact, my notes here will hopefully cover what I need to cover. So, the cost of unspoken expectations. Many expectations in family businesses are assumed and not necessarily stated. They're assumed and not necessarily stated. You hear people say things like this. Yeah, well, they should know about that, surely. They know that. I mean, they've always known that. They've always known. I mean, that was the understanding. I've always assumed that they knew. It's a general assumption. Well, role assumptions. Role assumptions. Well, everyone's known that I will eventually take over from Dad, well, yes, absolutely. Yeah, Mum's passing the reins to me. And when she decides that she wants to stop, or invisible emotional contracts where the understanding is there, but there's nothing formal, there's nothing laid out, there's nothing stated clearly. Now, I know in another one of these recordings, I will cover the whole essence of passing a business on or taking a business over, of multi-generational thoughts and issues. And that can be in this, but it can be much smaller stuff actually than, hey, I'm taking the business over. I'm the eldest, I will get the business or whatever. It's smaller stuff actually, can be very much the cost of unspoken expectations. They should know. Should they? Should they know? Is it clear? Have you made it clear? Well, everyone has always known. Really? Honestly? Truly? And I mean, this applies not just to families and family business, it applies to everybody in a family business. And it's worth remembering that family businesses retain staff at a far greater level and usually probably paying less because of the way a family business has grown, and people tend to stay with it because they like the values, the ethics, the ethos. But of course, if you're dealing with people who've been involved in the business for a long time, family or not, assumptions can be made. And we all make assumptions. As I say in every one of these recordings, please don't think I'm sitting here that I'm a guru, that I know everything, etc. It's not true. Everything I've learned the hard way of running our own businesses, our ups and our downs. I've certainly had plenty of downs as well as ups. And it's well documented. Check out the website, it'll tell you all that. But it's just the experience I've learned, if you like, at the age that I now am. What I want is for people to perhaps short circuit some of the learnings the hard way that I've gone through. And invisible emotional contracts is an interesting one, very interesting one. Because there's an emotional connection with everybody, people take it, well, that's it. Well, that's what it's going to be. Absolutely. It's always been that way. Well, yeah. I've worked with many family businesses where people have sat down with me and said, what the problem is I'm supposed to be taking this business on. It was always going to be that way. I've just found out that's not happening. Or, well, it's always been expected that I would take over sales and marketing, but actually now I've been asked to do operations. I hate operations, and all of a sudden I've got to do, I want to do sales and marketing. That's what I'm good at. No one talked about it. No one talked about it. All of a sudden a good idea happened. I'm thinking of a business right now. Exactly that happened. The challenge is unspoken expectations create resentment. Unspoken expectations can create resentment. So, in other words, you can have somebody inside the business that absolutely will keep talking about what they're going to do, and yet somebody else will be saying, well, it's always been known I will do that I will be doing something, that I will receive something, that this is how it's going to be. And if you don't believe that, just look at families when they inherit a property because parents have passed away, and all of a sudden they fight over what's left because nothing was laid out cast in stone. Nothing was made clear, and all of a sudden you see nice families disintegrate because they're arguing over pennies from the sale of a house. And I know a number of people that's happened to. And then when you go into a business, it exacerbates. It becomes so much bigger, so much bigger. And another thing I've found is that resentment grows in silence. Resentment grows in silence. Or previous recordings that we've done, we've talked a little bit about this, but there's no doubt about it. When somebody gets a no to something, or they don't get what they thought they were going to get, and they really feel aggrieved about it because they felt that that was always what was intended to happen, it can easily turn into resentment, very easily. And not only can it turn into resentment, it can turn into silent resentment, which is worse, way worse, because they're not talking about it. They're not having the conversation that's saying, hey, this isn't right, in my opinion. In my opinion, it was going to be something different. So resentment grows in silence, and that's a dodgy place to be. I guess structure protects relationships. One of the phrases that I've used quite a bit in recent times. Structure reflects relationships, and undoubtedly, when there is the cost of unspoken expectations, invariably there's no structure. There's no structure. And all of a sudden, people get resentful. They become resentful silently, and it festers and it burns. And that's a challenge. Assumptions can replace agreements. Assumptions can replace agreements, you can get to a situation where, yes, an original agreement was whatever it was, but over a course of days, weeks, months, years, usually it's years, what the original agreement was, it wasn't documented, it wasn't formalized, and assumptions change during that time. Life changes, and where you're still in the agreement of 10 years ago, got news for you, it's now 10 years later. And actually, the agreement needs to be different. But of course, as an individual, you're still 10 years ago. I'm not saying that's wrong, by the way. What I am saying is it's a challenge. Clarity reduces emotional strain. It's a good phrase. Clarity reduces emotional strain. And clarity invariably comes from structure. It comes from being upfront. It becomes spoken, not unspoken. So unspoken expectations are dangerous, whereas spoken expectations that have clarity and are clear and agreed have got a fighting chance of working. Otherwise, all you're going to get is more emotion. People get emotional about things. That's life. I hear people regularly saying, don't get emotional, it's just business. It makes me laugh. Sorry, business is emotional, whether you like it or not. You might be a person that has very little emotion. Your personality profile perhaps is, you're not a particularly emotional person. Well, guess what? Other people are. And just because you're not, doesn't mean to say everybody else isn't as well. It's highly likely they are. In which case, if you want to reduce emotional strain in your family business, what you need is to have some clarity, some structure, and then unspoken expectations don't have to arrive, do they? So here's some reflective questions for you. And if you remember, in each of these recordings, think, reflect, decide and act. Think, reflect, decide and act. It's not mine. very well known phrase, and I'm talking today about the cost of unspoken expectations. Why not have a think about it, reflect on it after this video, play it again if you want it. It's available, full stop, and decide if you need to do anything. And if you decide you need to take action, take action. If you decide you don't need to do anything, remember doing nothing is taking action. And I always stress that because people go, no, we'll leave it. Well, all right, you've made a decision to act by not acting. So now you've reflected on it. Here's a couple of things to think about. What expectations within the business have never been explicitly discussed? What expectations in the business have never been explicitly discussed? Not so they've implied, but let's have clarity. Let's have structure. What might frustration actually be? Something else. Maybe it's misaligned. Maybe it's just that the frustration is there, but actually the frustration is there for another reason. So again, it's about talking about these things, finding out what the frustration is, and then deciding if that's affecting a certain situation or actually it's affecting a different situation, if that makes sense. And I think the big one, and I have to work on this, personally I have to work on this, is what needs stating calmly. In another recording, I quoted a phrase, it's not mine, but I quoted a phrase, which was, to paraphrase it, courage is to look at something and discuss it calmly. You see, very rarely does everybody having an argument, raise voices, having a Benny, whatever you want to call it, actually sort things out. It might let off some steam, and there are times when that needs to happen, and in families it happens. But actually, if you reflect on the business itself, and if that's what you're doing with these 15-minute conversations, what needs stating calmly? What has clarity? What has structure? And what is it that you need to state calmly so you can all then be very clear of what true expectations there are based on what has been discussed so that everybody understands it? And I suggest you stick it in something. Now, I'm not talking about charters. That's something else to talk about at another time, of a way a business is going to flow or what have you. Just some simple pointers where you can say, this is what we've agreed at this meeting. Do you have clarity on this? Do you buy into it? Do you agree to it? By the way, do we agree into it? Do we buy into it? It's everybody that's part of this, the process and structure. Everybody clear? Is it documented as such? Okay, so if there's any challenge later on, we can reflect back to it. And if we reflect back to it, we'll decide if something's changed. And that's probably part of the challenge, I think. Unspoken expectations tend to come up where something was agreed 10 years ago and then it doesn't actually happen. I've come across many businesses where somebody has started with somebody else, but the way they did it, it was, oh, well, look, I'm going to have a shareholding in the business later, and it doesn't happen, and life gets very, very messy. Think, reflect, decide, take action, and if you don't take action, remember, you've taken action on the cost of unspoken expectations. Do you know what? Just by making this process clear and obvious to people, it will show the fact that, one, you care, and that, two, you're trying your best to make sure that everybody has clarity, which is 9/10 of the way of running a reasonable family business. So that's it. I hope that was useful. Family businesses rarely struggle for lack of commitment and time and effort. Where they tend to struggle is through relationships and through thinking and creating an atmosphere that works long time. Just by taking out a little slot, maybe this 15 minutes each and every week, will help you to reflect on the family business and decide whether there's an area that needs working on. And these ones particularly are not about how to get more business and get more sales and stuff. That's another section that I can do in a completely different way. This is about the thought process of the family business itself. So this has been Family Businesses in Conversation. I'm Peter Roper, known as the Family Businessman, founder of the Family Business Practice. You can find out me with peterroper.com or familybusinesspractice.com. Thanks very much for listening. See you again soon.